Okay, so today we are talking about the urinary system. Your urinary system rids the body of your waste products. It is closely associated with the reproductive system, and it has a shared embryonic development and adult anatomical relationship. Collectively, when you talk about the urinary and the reproductive system, you call it the urogenital system. Okay, so we said the urinary system basically rids our body of waste. And the urinary system consists of 6 organs: 2 kidneys, 2 ureters, 1 urinary bladder, and 1 urethra. Basically, you have these organs called kidneys, and they are the primary organs within the urinary system, and they have several functions. The kidneys filter blood plasma, and they separate waste from useful chemicals and return the useful substances back to the blood and eliminate the waste. So they're filters. They regulate the blood volume and pressure by eliminating or conserving water, depending on what you need. They regulate the osmolarity of the body fluids by controlling the relative amounts of water and solutes that are eliminated. And they secrete enzymes, one of which is renin, which activates hormonal mechanisms that control blood pressure and electrolyte balance. They also secrete the hormone erythropoietin, which stimulates the production of red blood cells. They collaborate with the lungs to regulate the PCO2 and the acid-base balance of body fluids. There is a final step in the synthesizing of the hormone calcitriol, which contributes to calcium homeostasis. We also see that the kidneys deal with glyconeogenesis from amino acids when your body is in extreme starvation. We mentioned that it rids the body of waste, and waste is basically any substance that is useless to the body or present in excess of what the body needs. There are metabolic wastes, and these are waste substances that are produced by the body. Urea formation, basically you have proteins that are broken down into amino acids. You have NH2 being removed. This then forms ammonia, and then the liver converts it to urea. There is also uric acid, and this is a product of nucleic acid catabolism. There is also something called creatinine, and this is a product of creatine phosphate catabolism. There is also something called BUN, which is blood urea nitrogen, and it is an expression of the level of nitrogenous waste in the blood. The normal concentration of blood urea is 10 to 20 milligrams per deciliter. But you could have an elevated BUN, azotemia, and this indicates that something is wrong in the renal functioning. Uremia is a syndrome of diarrhea, vomiting, dyspnea, and cardiac arrhythmia stemming from the toxicity of nitrogenous waste. And the treatment for this would be hemodialysis or organ transplant. So what happens here is, obviously we want our kidneys to be functioning correctly so that they are ridding our bodies of these toxic wastes. But if that is not the case, you are going to know pretty quickly, and you are going to probably be pretty sick, because these wastes, if they are not being eliminated properly, obviously are going to start building up in your body and cause a variety and many problems. So we want excretion, which is the separation of waste from body fluids and the elimination of them, to be happening regularly and efficiently. So 4 body systems actually carry out excretion. The respiratory system basically excretes carbon dioxide and small amounts of other gases and water, usually vapor. The integumentary system excretes water, inorganic salts, lactic acid, and some urea in our sweat. The digestive system secretes water, salts, carbon dioxide, lipids, bile pigments, cholesterol, and other metabolic waste and food residue. And then here we have the urinary system, and it secretes many metabolic wastes, toxins, drugs, hormones, salts, hydrogen, and water. So, the kidneys, the position, the weight, and the size. Well, they lie against the posterior abdominal wall at the level of your thoracic 12 to your lumbar 3. Those are your vertebrae. Your right kidney is slightly lower due to a larger right lobe of your liver. Rib 12 crosses the middle of our left kidney. They are what we call retroperitoneal, along with the ureters, urinary bladder, renal artery and vein, and adrenal glands. They are about the size of a bar of soap. The lateral surface is convex, and the medial side is concave with a little slit called the hilum. And this receives the renal nerves, the blood vessels, lymphatics, and the ureter. There are 3 protective connective tissue coverings. You have the renal fascia, which is immediately deep to the parietal peritoneum, and this binds the kidney to the abdominal wall. You have a perirenal fat capsule. This cushions the kidney and holds it in place. And then there is a fibrous capsule that encloses the kidney and protects it from trauma and infection. Here we have collagen fibers that extend from the fibrous capsule to the renal fascia. And it is about a drop of 3 centimeters when we go from lying down to standing up. So there's a little bit of give there, but for the most part, it's held in place. There is something called the renal parenchyma. This is a glandular tissue that forms urine. It appears C-shaped in the frontal section, and it encircles the renal sinus. The renal sinus contains the blood and lymphatic vessels, nerves, and urine collecting structures. Adipose fills the remaining cavity and holds these structures in place. There are 2 zones to this renal parenchyma. There is the outer renal cortex and the inner renal medulla. Within the medulla, we find renal columns and renal pyramids. Columns are extensions of the cortex that project inward toward the sinus. There are 6 to 10 pyramids with broad bases that face the cortex and the renal papilla that are facing the sinus. You also have a lobe of the kidney, and this is one pyramid and its overlying cortex. That's a section or a lobe. There is what's called a minor calyx. This is the cup that nestles the papilla of each pyramid and collects the urine. There are major calyces, and these are formed by the convergence of 2 or 3 minor calyces. There is a renal pelvis that is formed by the convergence of 2 or 3 major calyces. And then you have a ureter. And this is a tubular continuation of the pelvis that drains the urine down to the urinary bladder. And that brings us to the conclusion of our first lecture on just a little bit about the urinary system and where the kidneys are and how they are set up. Please let me know if you have any questions.